Hey, everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Michael Forrest, and welcome to I Am Possible. Now, I Am Possible is an event where we trade stories about things that, we didn't think we could do, or people that we know, who overcame odds, and again, it doesn't have to be stories from the real world. It can be something you did in VR, like you didn't think you could build a world. Like the world we're standing in, for example, is one thing. But before we get going, let me just a couple of ground rules here. One, try not to send me text messages if you can while I'm up here, because when you're performing in VR and suddenly you get a big wall of text in your face, it's kind of like hitting the wall and it can throw you off a little bit. So I'd appreciate if you save those to the end. Also, if you could stay off of this top step here, this way nobody blocks the big display behind me, and it gives me a little bit of room to move around the whole hosting thing. All right. Now, if I could also direct your attention to the top of your menu wheel on your lower left, you're going to notice that there's a microphone icon. And when that microphone icon is clear, that means your microphone's open and we can hear everything that's happening in your environment. Right. So if like somebody comes in your space and says, "Hey, are you still on that thing?" Well, you can feel free to answer them because we've gone ahead and turned that to red, which means you're muted. So like if you have a barking dog or something like that in the background, you're not going to face social ruin by becoming known as the avatar that suddenly started barking during I Am Possible, right? But just because you're muted doesn't mean you can't express yourself. You can and should use this pink cheek smiley face emoji on your menu wheel. And when you click on it, it gives you a wide variety of options with which to express yourself, right? What you have is basically if you press on that, your emoji panel will open up in front of you. And if somebody shares a story today, it's really moving, it's really powerful, and it touches you right here and it builds up, you can just let it out. Maybe somebody tells like a story where they, swing across quicksand, Tarzan style, and you're all really impressed. You throw up the applause like that, and they'll feel good, because applause are always nice, right? You can also, if somebody tells a story and it's really resonating with you, you can show it by smiling. Maybe it's a sad story. You want to show that, like, hey, that's really sad, and you bring me down. And what am I doing on this event making me sad, right? Maybe it's a funny story, and you want to show that you're laughing. You do that too. And then there's this thing, right? This is by far the most distracting of all the emojis, right? And you can use this as a way to get my attention if something's gone wrong. This isn't how you ask a question or how you get on the list or anything like that. This is, how you alert me that, like, maybe I'm moving my hands around here and it looks like I'm talking, but there's no sound coming out. And you're like, hey, this guy's really animated, but there's no sound. What's up with that? Well, you press this to get my attention. Now, if, like, if only one hand goes up like that, probably going to keep on going because people like to mess around sometimes. But if I see five of them going up at the same time, I'm like, oh, there's a problem. Need to address it. Maybe this set's on fire, which can happen if you look at this slide here that kind of, indicates that. But yeah, so what you want to do also is you can, to close this panel, you press that X in the middle of it, but it's a good idea to leave it open during events, like, because it gives me feedback, lets me know how I'm doing, and people who are sharing stories today, lets them, gives them some encouragement there, and maybe, and more importantly, lets the people around you know what you're experiencing. So like if the person next to you starts going like this, that means they found something funny and you may not agree. You might be like, that's not funny at all, I'm gonna go stand over here. And you can totally do that because this is VR, right? All right, now, I Am Possible, as I said before, is an event where we're going to trade stories about when we ourselves or people we know, or maybe a story you read, could be a movie, could be a book you read, where somebody overcame difficult odds that you didn't think, or the people around you didn't think could be done, right? And before we get going, I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief history of how I became, familiar with this word "possible," how I came to have kind of a problem with it. Now, when I was a kid, I had one summer where these, bullies were really giving me a hard time. They were all like, a couple to a few years older than me, and every day they would chase me down this alleyway and they'd beat me up, right? And in the beginning, I tried to fight back, I tried to run away, all that kind of stuff, right? And they'd always tell me, "Don't run away, it's impossible," right? And I thought I knew what that word meant. That meant clearly it couldn't be done, right? Then they said, "Don't fight back, don't run, it's impossible." And again, I thought I knew what that word meant, so eventually I stopped trying, right? And then one day, my dad, he owned a bar at the time. And one day, this man comes into the bar with a shopping bag, right? He has a few drinks or whatever. And he goes to settle his bills. And he goes to my father and says, "Hey, do you have any kids at home?" And my dad says, "Yeah, I got two boys." Right. So the man takes a shopping bag and he puts it up on the bar and he says, "Well, they'll like these." And he slides it across the bar to my dad. And my dad looks in that bag like he's looking to expect, like this is going to be the biggest tip I ever got. It's going to be a sack full of money. And he looks inside, and instead, it's a stack full of Batman comics. So he brings them home and he slides the first of many under my door. Right. And I didn't read this like a kid typically reads a comic book, man. I read this like it was an instruction manual. Right. I was learning, I was studying. Right. And what I did was I took a backpack and I modified it just slightly. Right. On the side pocket there, I put a little drawstring on the bottom and I filled it up with these like, glass marbles. And the next day, as these bullies were chasing me down the alleyway, what I did, right, was I reached back and I pulled on that drawstring nice and hard. Right. And what happened was you heard the clatter of all the glass coming up behind me, and I kept on running and I'm running. And I go up and down, up to the garages, and there's a stone wall there. I climb up this ladder there. Right. And as soon as I make it up on top of the garages, I look down the alleyway, and all I see are these kids, and they're all like falling down. and they try to get up, and they fall back down. And I started giggling hard, man. I started laughing. And all of a sudden, I stopped laughing because I realized I had just done what they said was impossible. Right? Clearly, that word don't mean what people think it means. And so I went to the library, and the statute of limitations is up now. I can finally confess this. What I did was I went into the library, right? Every dictionary I could find in that building, I crossed out the word impossible because I refused to believe in it. And ever since then, right, when I'm confronted to that word, it's kind of like there. It means I got to do the thing. It means I can't give up. It means I got to keep on going. All right. And that's the kind of thing we're doing. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make a raise hand button appear on your lower right. You're going to see it appear as if by magic. That's what, the magic looks like in VR. Right. Now, if you have a story that you want to share with us, please remember that we are recording this on YouTube. So, if, sometimes it can get a little personal in here. If you tell a story and you're like, oh, man, I shouldn't have said that. That was too much. I revealed too much. What if my mom sees this? Dwayne, what happens then, right? Well, what you do is you just come up to me after the show and tell me, like, you want to edit that part out, and we'll make sure that we cut it out, okay? Otherwise, this is going to go out on YouTube in about a week or so. All right, so if you have any kind of story that you want to share, just press that raise hand button. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on going because you know what? Pauses are the natural enemy of the Alt Space event host. It's true. All right, since I don't see anybody on the list yet, what I'm going to do is help one of my favorites, actually. Back in the early days of the U.S., there was this gold miner, right, and a prospector, and he comes into possession of a gold mine, and he worked this thing every day, and he kept looking, in there, and what happened was, he'd go in the town and he'd go to the saloon at the end of the day, and once he got to the saloon, he'd go there and he'd drink and wine and whatever. His man would always come up to him every single day and ask him, "Hey, can you sell me that mine? I'm willing to take it off your hands." Now, this old miner, he said, there's no way I'm ever going to sell this thing. There's gold in there. I know there is. I can feel it in my bones, right? And every single day, the guy would come up to him and ask him the same question. Every single day, the miner would say no. But every single day, the miner, he was getting, he was looking a little bit more tired, a little bit more worn down, looking a little bit more discouraged. And then one day came where he had one of those days, and you've all had days like this where nothing goes right, where, his fuses were wet and his pickaxes were broken, and, he was all sore, and he comes into town, and, it's raining, and he's just miserable. And the guy walks up to him and he says, before he could even say anything, the miner says, "All right, fine, I'll sell you the mine. You can have it." Right. And he gives him a good, gives it to him at a good price. And a few days go by, and the miner comes back into the saloon, feeling okay. He's kind of missing it, but he's all right. And he comes in and sees the man he sold the mine to celebrating. The guy's, buying everybody drinks, and, people are cheering, spirits are high. And the miner goes up to him and says, "What's the occasion?" And the guy says, "Well, that mine you sold me, we found gold in there." Right. And the miner's like, "Oh, man, you got to tell me, how close was I?" And the guy goes, "Well, we only dug about 3 feet." Right. Now, for the rest of that miner's life, every time he got discouraged, every time he was about to give up, every time he was about to call it quits, he would tell himself, "I'm 3 feet from gold." And every single time he said it to himself, he would keep on going. Because very often in life, it's like that. Right when you're about to quit, right when you're about to give up, that's about the time everything's about to turn around. Right. And sometimes if you don't quit, sometimes if you keep going, you'll find you can do the impossible. Right. And so what happened is this miner, he went on to actually be very successful with that philosophy because he just kept on going no matter how discouraged he got. All right. Now, let's see. I'm seeing somebody on the list here. Let's see. We've got Frank. Frank, what's up? How's it going? You got a story for us? What's going on, Frank? How are you?
Yes, I do. Hi.
Hi.
So I think of, a couple of things. One is Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
Yes. Henry
Right.
Ford's a great one. Mm-hmm.
And then, do you know who Nick Vujicic is?
Wojciech. It's familiar.
Yeah.
It's ringing a
Yeah,
bell.
he's the guy that has no arms and no legs. He's a motivational speaker.
Oh, wow.
And so he goes all over the world, and like he goes out of his way, like you're saying, that he'll go out of his way. Like if somebody says that he can't go surfing, he goes surfing. If
Yes, a
somebody
good
tells
dare.
him he can't golf, he goes golfing. And
There you go.
he probably sucks at it at first for a while, but like he just keeps trying and trying and trying. And it's almost like he goes out of his way. Like for example, the guy jumps into the deep end of the swimming pool, and you
Yeah.
go, "Dude, the guy's got no arms and no legs. It's like it's done. Like get the lifeguard, right?" And I
Yeah.
don't have any freaking idea in the world as to how he does it, but he actually swims.
Wow. That's cool.
And
That's
so,
really
so
nice.
it's
I like.
amazing. Like anytime I start to get a little bit down and I start getting into, I can't do this and I can't do that. I watch one of his videos and I just feel like humbled, and I just feel
Yeah.
like, what's up? Like, shut up and get off your butt and try, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's like that too. Like when you're, about to give up, it's often like if you keep going, it gets a lot easier, and before you know it, you're doing the thing, right? And that's the way to get good at stuff. You just keep on doing it, right? And before long, you're going to be doing stuff you didn't think you could. Because you know what I found out when we first started this event, we did this as a one-time thing, right? We were only going to just try it. We thought there was a lot of negativity in the world, and we figured we'd give it a shot because, maybe somebody would come here facing like maybe they're in a difficult relationship, or maybe they're facing a difficult challenge at work or at school or something like that. And they were about to quit, and they'd come here and they'd hear one of these stories, right? And they'd be like, you know what? I'm going to stay in this thing. I'm going to keep on going, right? And during that first event, right, it came out that like, it's not so much the word impossible as our relationship to it. Like we're kind of our own worst enemy. Like we talk ourselves into, well, actually, we talk ourselves out of things that we could actually do by saying, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or "I'm never going to be able to do that thing." As like at the beginning when I first started Altspace, I was told because of my device I wouldn't be able to host events. Turned out, I do like 8 events a week now. And it turns out I could, and so that's a kind of a cool thing. Let's see. So I don't have anybody else on the list, right? So I'm going to keep on going, right? There's another one that I like. This is in the when in the Olympics when the U.S. first competed in the discus event. Um, what happened was, they were training really hard, and and they were comparing themselves to the known records at the time, like what they thought the best humanity had to offer. What those records were, right? And so they were training, but they weren't coming anywhere close to these numbers, and they were getting nervous because, like, you know what, we're going to embarrass ourselves. This is going to be really bad, but we got to show up, right? So they keep on training, and they're falling really short of all the goals there, and they keep training harder and harder, but they're like, they're trying to get like, close enough to where they can kind of walk away with a little bit of dignity. Like, so they went in pretty well convinced they were going to lose. Right. And they went up to the Olympic community, committee, and they presented their discs up there. And the Olympic committee said, listen, you can't use these. They're not regulation. Right. And, so the discus team were like, oh, what are we going to do? Right. And they said, well, yeah, the Olympic committee said, you could use these. And they gave them some regulation discs. Right. And they went out to the practice field to get ready. Now, there are other events going on, and the entire audience turned away from those events and started looking at the practice field because all of a sudden, right, these people, they were breaking records like crazy before they even got, were ready to compete. This was just in the warm-ups, right? And then they, they got on the field to compete, and they like shattered like every record, like just completely. I mean, now it's common practice to train with heavier weights, but back then you trained with the disc you were going to use, right? So a lot of the times when you're facing like adversity or things are kind of hard on you, it could actually end up making you better and stronger. So when you go through a difficult time, right, you can walk out on the other side of that difficult time. Sometimes, very often, stronger or better than you were before, which is kind of cool. Again, if you want to add a story or contribute in any way, you just press that raise hand button on your lower right. I do see a hand popping up in the back from Chris there. Hey, Chris, how's it going? All you want to do is press that raise hand button if you have something you want to contribute, or share with us. Just remember that this is going out on YouTube, and if it's a personal story, just let me know, and we'll make sure that that we cut it out. All right. So yeah, if you do want to get on, press that raise hand button. And I see your hand going up there, Chris. You got to press the raise hand button in your lower right, not the emoji, if you want to get on the list. It's like right on your lower right hand side there. And then I'll see you on my list here, and I'll get you on the air there. All right. I'm seeing that hand pop up, that emoji hand. You got to actually press the raise hand button on the right hand side, not from the emoji wheel. All right. That'll get you on there. And give that a shot. No. Okay. Oh, there you are. Okay. Let's get you on the list. Here we are. There you are, Chris. What's going on? You're on the air. How's it going?
A
Chris?
couple years
There
ago,
you are.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yeah.
now. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I fought cancer. I was in the
Wow.
hospital for a year, and I kept saying, when I get out, I'm going to get on an airplane because I hate
Mhm.
flying. Well, I
Yeah.
made it, and I got to go to Vegas. It was awesome.
Oh, cool. How do you have a good time in Vegas?
I did.
Nice. Very cool. That is a very difficult battle. It is a very tough thing. I've known a lot of people who have fought it, and it is, not something, I would wish on anybody. It's a very tough thing. And it's really, I think that's the kind of thing where, to beat it, you really have to be strong inside. It
You do.
speaks well of Chris. It really does. All right, let's see. We also have Lightning Leg. I can't see your full name. Actually, I think you're gone. I think you left the space because I'm not seeing any microphone there. Okay. Speaking of illnesses, actually, that reminds me of another one, and I don't have anybody on the list here. So, if you do have one you want to contribute, we'll get you at the next pause. So just press that raise hand button to get on the list there. But back in the early '80s, there was a couple, right, and they had a young son, about 4 years old, and at the age of 4, he could already speak 3 languages, and his parents were very proud. They were very impressed with him. They thought he was a great kid. And then he started acting, gradually started acting a little bit strange, right? He started bumping into things, he started slurring his words. He just started school. And in that time, he started, fighting with other children and things like that. And, they knew something was wrong. Okay. So, as it went on, they took him to these doctors and nobody could find anything wrong with him. But eventually he was diagnosed with a disease I have no business trying to pronounce. It's commonly known as ALD. All right. It's a degenerative disease. And doctors told him, told the parents, listen, go home and spend time with your son because he's not going to make it. He's only got about a couple years to live at best. Uh, and they gave him a number of a support group. And yes, it's really hard, but you're going to have to accept this. And the parents said no. They went to other doctors, and the doctors told them the same thing. You got about 2 years. You got to learn how to accept it. Here's a number of support group, and I'm very sorry, but this is going to happen. And the parents said no. And they started reading all these like medical journals, and they started getting access to medical libraries and studying like animal experimentation. And you have to remember, they only had a high school education with regards to math and sciences, but gradually they kept studying and they taught themselves. And gradually over time, they learned the language of math, of science, of chemistry, right? And they just kept putting, time into it. And the support group ended up like coming to their house telling them, listen, you're not going to change this, because they kept bothering doctors with like questions every time you came across something they thought was a lead. And the doctors tell them, look, you're just, regular people. You don't have the training to do this, right? You're just making it harder on yourself. Spend what time you can with your son. And, the parents said no. And they kept on going. And they kept on researching. And gradually they came across this oil that they thought was very promising, that was supposed to separate the lipids from the blood in such a way as they thought would slow down the progression of this disease. And, and the doctors, told them, this is, kind of quack medicine, and stay away from it. But they started administering this oil to their son's diet, right? And then, after some time went by, they had the blood, tested, and for the son's blood tested. And what happened was they found that the disease was actually starting to slow down. And so they got very excited, and they started contacting all these chemists to refine the oil and produce it for them. And and this is back in the days before the internet was like really taking hold. So there was no email. I mean, they're writing like letters by hand, and they're making all these expensive phone calls, right? And it's piling up, and they're putting a lot of time into this. And they contacted well over 100 different chemists. And finally there was landed one of these letters landed on the desk of a chemist who was about to retire. It was his last day, and he read this letter and he was very moved. And he contacted the couple and he said, "Listen, I'll produce this for you. We're going to have to call it something. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to name it after your son." And it became known as Lorenzo's Oil. They made a movie about this too. It's very promising stuff. And what happened was they started, the oil got refined. They gave it to the son, and the son lived to the age of 28 when he eventually died of pneumonia. And it was also, due to complications of damage that the disease had created early on. But now whenever somebody is diagnosed with this disease, the foundation that was created from this, they contact them and they're able to hold off the disease and kind of put it on hold using this oil. And eventually, the medical establishment came out and admitted there is a property in this oil that actually does do this, right? And it all came out of a couple of regular people refused to accept the basically the diagnosis of their son. So they just kept pushing and they kept on going, and and a lot of times, it's like that when you're facing something that's really tough, and you could just refuse to accept it. That refusal is very often enough to push you through, and get you through to the other side of the thing, right? All right, now, if anybody has any stories they'd like to share, you just press that raise hand button on your lower right, and that'll get you on my list. And once you're on the list, you can, share it with the group here. Just please remember that this is going out on YouTube, and if it's something too personal that you don't want going out on YouTube, just let me know, and we'll make sure that we edit it out. All right. And, if you're interested too, that's Ray and I up there. That's our YouTube camera. If you want to feel alt space famous, you can just wave out and be like, "Hey, YouTube, how's it going? I see you seeing us," right? All right. Now, let's see. We don't have anybody on the list right now. So, yeah, I guess I'll go into another one. Back in my late teens, I got really into like hiking and stuff like that, right? And, camping and all that. And my friend Chris and I, we were going to go up to upstate New York to this place called Lake George, a big, beautiful lake in this, wooded area and everything. And a couple months before we went, there had been like a lot of rain, like tremendous rain. And we had heard that there was a lot of, really beautiful waterfalls coming down into the lake. and we planned on exploring them. So we go out there, and we're wearing like we look like proper hikers. We got the flannel shirts on, the backpacks, and we've got these boots. But these boots aren't hiking boots; they're like construction boots, like the steel toe kind, really heavy. You'll find out why that's important in a minute. So we get out to this waterfall, and we're like exploring it. And my friend Chris slips on a rock, right? Falls into the water, and the current carries him right into my legs, knocks me over, and then both of us explode out over the top of the waterfall and right into the lake, about a 12 feet drop. We were okay. We came up out of the water and we were laughing, we were carrying on, we were playing around. And what happened was we stopped laughing because when we tried to get on shore, all these like, big, it's hard to describe it, but there were these big clumps of mud were coming down on us with these giant like boulders that were like splashing in there, like, and we couldn't get out of the water. We kept trying and it just kept getting worse. And, so we kind of treading water, and what are we going to do? Well, we looked over and we saw this giant boulder where our campsite was across the lake. We saw our tents from there and didn't look that far. And we said, let's just swim for it. And we're both good swimmers, right? Well, we get out to about the middle of the lake, and all of a sudden Chris calls out to me, and I'm like, yeah, what's up? We're treading water, and he says, he goes, Mike, I don't think I'm going to make it. Right. And I look back to where we come from, and I look to where we were going. We were about halfway there. It was the same distance either way. But if we swam back to that waterfall, there's no guarantee we'd be able to get out of the water, and there'd be no supplies or no help. Right. So I convinced him, let's just keep going. Let's dig in and just push through this. Right. Now, we get a little bit further, and, I started feeling like, man, I don't think I'm going to make it. Right. And I started realizing, this could be right. I don't want to go. I don't want to go out like this, And what happened was Chris, some adrenaline must have kicked in or something, or he'd watched one too many Rocky movies because he started yelling. He started yelling out, "We can do this. We can make it. Dig in," stuff like that. I mean, I think he called me a bum a couple of times if you've ever seen those Rocky movies. And he was like carrying on like that. And then I started doing it, and we're both yelling back and forth all this positive stuff. And before you know it, we pulled ourselves out of the water, right, onto this boulder there, right, and we kind of just collapsed. And we didn't say anything for about an hour. We're just laying there in the sun, drying off, and it was the kind of thing where about an hour goes by, and all of a sudden Chris goes, "We made it," just like that, right? And what happened was we ended up staying an extra day just because we were so beat up from this experience. I mean, it really, it was very physically painful, very taxing. I don't think I've ever pushed myself that hard, before or since. It was probably one of the worst physically exhausting things I've ever experienced. But yeah, but we did it, and we made it, and we got there. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. Now we have time for one more if anyone's willing to press on that raise hand button. All right. No, not yet. Okay, cool. All right, so let me see here. Still going to jump on the slides here a little bit. Let's see. All right. Now, if you've enjoyed your time here today, please go to altvr.com. And when you get there, if you would, press on that, that channels button at the upper left. And when you press on that, you get taken to all these, events, all these event channels that they have in AltSpace. You press on channels there, and you'll see Ravenhall events listed among them. And if you've, enjoyed your experience today, press that subscribe button because it lets AltSpace know that you enjoy our content. We don't get paid to do this, so every time we see that number go up, it feels good. If you want to see yourself out on YouTube, do a search for Ravenhall Labs, Ravenhall Events on YouTube, and you'll find us. And if you subscribe to that channel, it means a lot because every time we see those numbers goes up, it makes it feel like we're doing good work here. And if you're on Twitter and you want to follow us, you can find us at __Uncanny Valley. Now to close out, we're going to end with a special effect that we do that we once thought was impossible. Because when we started out here, all we had was an Apple iPad and a headset, and that was pretty much it, right? And we started working on this world that you're standing in, and we thought that was impossible. All right, we really did. We didn't think it could be done. And people told us, you don't have the right equipment. You need a computer to do this. But the world you're standing in was actually built on an Apple iPad, right? And there was an old laptop involved, but it could only run Unity for about 15 minutes before it would crash. And along the way, we're able to update our equipment. But we used that word impossible a bunch of times while we were working on this. And part of what we worked on was these buttons right here, right? Now I'm going to press this top button. And when I do, you're going to see a Ravenhall Talon hovercraft, because at the end of our events, we always take everybody flying, right? And you're going to see one of these hovercrafts come up over that wall, fly across the forum, right? And then you're going to touch down on that landing pad over there and take us away to the Flight Academy. Before we head out, I do see we have Frank's on our list again. Frank, what's up? Make sure we get you. What's going on, Frank?
Your story about you and your friend going down the river reminded me. Well, Now that I'm saying it out loud, it doesn't really sound like it even compares, but I
It
guess the
might.
point is about encouraging other people. So I went to this, it was kind of a fundraiser situation, and it was a 5K, and I thought it was just doing a presentation, and little did I know that they actually expected me to run in the 5K, and
Oh
I had
wow.
not only I had to like literally like run to the store and get socks because I wasn't even wearing
Wow.
socks. To say I wasn't wearing the right apparel or shoes or anything doesn't even begin to cover it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I hadn't run a step in years. And so when I started off, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? I'm crazy. Maybe I could just dip out at some place and nobody will notice and whatever. And there was a gal that was running, and she was real heavy, and it was immediately apparent that she was having a really hard time. And so what I did is I kind of latched on to her and kept trying to encourage her and encourage. I was like, just make it another 100 feet. You're doing great. And so, like, interestingly, like by me investing so much in trying to help her, like then I felt like, well, what kind of a schmuck would I be if I like dipped out after I'm like encouraging her? So like I don't think if I was just thinking about myself, I really don't think I would have been able to make it, right? It
You know,
would have
you,
been quote
you know what's
unquote
awesome about
impossible.
that?
What's
You know what's
up?
really awesome about that is when you put somebody ahead of yourself, often you'll end up forgetting yourself. And in doing that, you can often get much further than you could. One of the first I Am Possibles that we had, somebody told a story where they were with somebody out in the woods. Apparently in Germany, they have some kind of survival thing. It's part of like their education. And they bring them out into the woods. And one of the kids, they injured their leg pretty badly. I don't know if it was broken or there was bone involved. It was very graphic, And what happened was they actually carried them out, and they were feeling all this like physical pain of exhaustion, but they were completely ignoring themselves because they were completely fixated on the person they were helping. And it
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of that. It's like when you forget yourself, sometimes you can go a little bit further there. All right. That being said, I'm going to press this button now. So if everybody direct your attention to that wall over there, right? Take a good look at this.
Ravenhall Talon aircraft en route to your position. Please stay clear of the landing pad. Thank you.
All right, so you can see the ship coming up over the wall, hovercraft. And again, you're able to fly these, right? At the Ravenhall Flight Academy, and you'll be able to, fly those there. And then, if we can go over up to this landing pad here, and take it on out there. But you'll see it flying over and head on up, and head on out, right? Okay, so it's gonna touch
Talon
down over
aircraft is
here.
now
There we
boarding
go.
for transport to the Ravenhall Flight Academy. Please step
I
into the
remember
blue
everybody.
light. Thank you.
Well, I don't believe in the word impossible. I do believe in all of you. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you next time.